Hi, everyone. Welcome to our One World Energy Encounter with the Zohar. Today, this week's portion is actually a double portion of Matot-Masei. There is no Zohar for Masei. We're at the Zohar for Matot, and it's only 6 paragraphs long, but it's, as our teachers tell us, less is more. So there's a lot of energy that's packed into these Zohars. So before we begin, let's connect to the Kabbalistic lineage, ask for help from the Rav and Karen and Michael, Rabbi Shlag, Rabbi Brandwein, the Riyah Kodesh, the Ramchal, Rabbi Tarfon, Rabbi Mazulai, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, Rav Kolonu Shapir Pia Setzen, the Baal Shem Tov, Rav Shum Bar Yochai, noble students, or Mordechai of Chernobyl, one soul with Yosef Atzadik in Shechem. Today also happens to be the anniversary of elevation of Joseph the Righteous, Yosef Atzadik, otherwise known as the head of the tribe of Joseph, although there really wasn't a Joseph tribe. It was really one of his sons who he's aligned with. But it's Yosef ben Yaakov, Jacob's son. So we have his assistance today. And so Kabbalists view this day on the anniversary of elevation of Joseph, we're connecting to his energy. What was his energy? Manifestation of both physical and spiritual sustenance. So this is a tremendous day for manifesting fulfillment of both a spiritual and physical means. So, we can light a candle, we can give charity. There are a lot of things that we can do to more fully connect. One of them is to learn Zohar, and of course, connect with the assistance of Joseph the Righteous. So we have his assistance. As we connect to these verses, let's raise our consciousness to connect with the upper realm and channel the energy of healing for everybody we know who needs healing. Chana bat Rivka, Sarah bat Yehudit, Sarah bat Malka. Just think of all the people that we know that we need healing and send them healing energy. Also, the energy of assistance to those souls who are transitioning. Moshe ben Naphtali. Also, all the others, just all the souls we know who in the past year are transitioning. We want to send them energy of elevation and assistance on their journey. Also, let's connect to the energy of Ahavat Chinam, unconditional love in the world, treating everyone with human decency, protection from evil eye and evil speech, ending the war in Israel, the safe release of all the hostages, ending the war between Russia and the Ukraine, and removing negativity and chaos from our world. Okay. Let's go to verse 1. Again, it's Matot, and in my volume 21, it's page 295. V'chol ataf b'nashim asher lo yadu mishkav zachar, taman tenanan. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, ein holam mitnaheg ela bitrei gavnin, diatu mistar itata, dishchachat chakimat liba, adug yativ, v'chol isha chakmat lev, biyadeha, tavu v'yaviu matveh, et ha'techelet v'et ha'argaman, umay matjan, et ha'techelet v'et ha'argaman, gavnin dichlilan, go gavabne. Okay, so this article is entitled, "The World is Maintained by Two Colors." What? What could that possibly mean? Does it mean it's maintained by two colors? Since when do colors sustain anything? Colors are just, colorful. I mean, yeah, I suppose at an energetic level, like they impact us. Color does affect us, but what is it? Sounds like the whole world, the whole reality is hanging on two threads, color. And arguably, that's exactly what's going on. But let's try and understand in a deeper way. What does that mean? How am I supposed to wrap my head around this idea that our reality is hanging by the two threads of two colors? Okay, so Maria, would you mind? Let's just read that synopsis before we get into the translation.
Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yitzchak talk about the wise-hearted women that spin and work with their hands, and from this they derive that those women combine judgment and mercy.
Okay, so it's a little bit of a foreshadowing. We are talking about colors, but ultimately we're talking about judgment and mercy. And we know that because our teachers have taught us, and the Zohar says, and the Zohar we'll see where it says this. We know that mercy is white and judgment is red. So those are really the two colors. But why is it expressed in color? Why wouldn't it be just why? What do you mean it's color? Why would it be? Why wouldn't it just be expressed in terms of judgment and mercy? The world is maintained by judgment and mercy. Anyone have any ideas? Why would it say color? Why shouldn't it just be the world is maintained by judgment and mercy? So to a certain degree, part of the work that we do is to unpack reality. I can tell you something, but the reality is life is experiential. And so this is another example of all the things that we do. Nothing is really spelled out. We have to unpack it to really appreciate it. Otherwise, we just go with the surface. Like when I have to go below the surface, I experience what's going on below the surface. And so the Zohar and a lot of our holy texts give us just enough to get us started, but ultimately, that's the work that we're doing. We talk about this all the time. What does it mean to study the Torah? It means to unpack reality with the assistance of the blueprint for reality. Well, where is that? If you ever like had to do work on a house, before you can get like permits or before anyone wants to do like a project, like they want to look at the blueprints. You got to see what's behind the walls. You got to see what the original construct was. It's a challenge if no one has the blueprints. Because then what are we doing? How are we going to figure it out? Oh, we'll wing it. I don't want to wing it. I want the blueprints for reality. I want to know what I'm navigating here. And I'm not talking about the weather report. I'm talking about my soul's journey. What is the blueprint for this reality that I'm supposed to be navigating? Well, that's what the Torah is. It's not literature. It's not story time. It's the blueprint for reality that shows up as a narrative because that's the way our minds work. We're always trying to figure things out. We're always looking for the truth, the true narrative. That's the true narrative, but it requires unpacking. So that's the first thing. So the first thing that we get, or multiple things, is like we get this idea that judgment and mercy are really important, and literally our reality hangs on that. So we want to really have a lot of consciousness and awareness about what that means. And we also get the takeaway that we have tools. We've been given things to assist us on this journey. And yeah, the 5 books of Moses gets classified as literature. I imagine it, even in the Library of Congress, there's probably a Dewey Decimal System if they still use that number for 5 books of Moses, but that's not what it's about. It's not literature. It's the blueprint for reality. So it's much greater than that. So we have the ability to wrap our heads around that, but there's something else that's going on here. 2 students of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yitzchak, what they're bringing this up is in the context of what are known as wise-hearted women. So the first question is, what is a wise-hearted woman? And furthermore, what do these wise-hearted women do? They spin and work with their hands. And from that, we learn that they combine judgment and mercy. It's like, what are we talking about? So we're gonna unpack this. And as you can see, when I said at the outset that there's less is more, there's a lot here to unpack. But ultimately, we're doing this because it helps us manifest our soul, manifest the best version of ourselves, rise above our body consciousness, and align ourselves with our soul's purpose. That's what this is about. And so it's a huge opportunity for that. And especially on a day as momentous as today is, which is we have the energy of Joseph the Righteous with us. Okay, let's yeah, we're not even out of the synopsis. Go ahead, Maria. Continue.
Okay. We hear that Rabbi Eleazar said that every woman is considered judgment until she marries a man of Israel who is compassion, and thus judgment and mercy are joined together.
I feel like I'm like reading like, Match.com or something like, or like some kind of dating app. What is this man's traits? Well, he's compassionate. He joins judgment and mercy together, whatever that means. So what exactly is going on? What exactly is going on here? You would think, well, Rabbi Elazar is saying that every woman is considered judgment. Really? Because I see women as being much more compassionate. It looks to me like they're much more right column. So what does it mean that they're judgment? So they may be right column, but they're coming from the side of judgment, which means that's where their tikkun lies. In other words, they may be they're considered judgment because they need to do the work of compassion. And so where does that compassion come from? Well, in this context, that compassion comes from marrying a member of the tribe, someone from the tribes of Israel. Why? Because that particular group is wired for mercy. Well, that's funny because I don't see that in guys either. They look like they're coming from the side of judgment. So another quick take on this for us is the benefit of going beyond the way things are considered, the way they appear. It's like piercing the veil of this illusion that we are constantly in contact with and getting down to the inner intelligence, the inner consciousness, the inner energy. You can't, it's like we're performing soul surgery to a certain degree, and you got to be at the soul level to perform that surgery. Like we are literally fixing the world. We're really perfecting creation. And so to do that, we can't do that at a surface level. It's all taking place at a very deep level. And that's what we're doing here. Okay, continue.
Um, the rabbis explain why it is forbidden for men to have intercourse with women from the other nations.
Okay, so it sounds like, a pretty serious thing, but we need to look at that again from an energetic standpoint. It's like who we let into our orbit affects us. So it's interaction with negativity. That's what's going on here. And so again, it's an important reminder of what we let into our consciousness. We need to be protective of that. What we let into who we are interacting with, we need to be very conscious of that also. Okay, let's continue.
We hear that God called the soul of Israel Chesed, so that the world will never be without love.
Okay, so additionally, the Creator called the souls of Israel, the children of Israel, mercy, chesed, so the world will never be without love. So like part of who we are is channeling this energy of mercy. I mean, if you're on this path, you're within the tribes of the children of Israel, literally the children of Jacob. Literally, we're studying this on the day where who took over for Jacob? Joseph did to the greatest degree, certainly at that time. Joseph, Abraham, Joseph's grandfather, was the channel for mercy. Joseph was the channel for Yesod. that is the Sphira, the point through which all the energy from the upper realm arrives into our realm of Malchut, of manifestation. So Joseph is literally the gatekeeper on manifesting blessings. And so we carry that legacy. Is it really a legacy? No, really it's not. It's really more of a spiritual attunement or at one atonement, at one ment. It's really our connection to Joseph, through the Sphira of Yesod, the channel through which all manifestation, all blessings are manifested in this world. And what's the most important aspect of it? Well, what we're hearing is that, what does it mean to be called the souls of Israel, called the souls of Israel mercy? Well, it's not just a name, it's a reflection of the internal intelligence, energy intelligence, energy consciousness. It's like we're wired to channel mercy into the world. So again, a reminder, when you're on this path, we're responsible for channeling love and mercy into this world, unconditional love. That's why we always set our conscience when we start studying Zohar to avat chinam, unconditional love. That's why that's there. And so again, another opportunity for us here is to acknowledge that, create space for that, connect to that, and understand that that's part of what we're here to do. And you can look around the world and you see that there's a real lack of that, of unconditional love. I don't agree with everybody, but that doesn't mean I'm not treating them with human decency. It doesn't mean I'm not having unconditional love for everybody. I may need a boundary as to who I let in, but it doesn't mean I'm not treating everyone with human decency and unconditional love. I mean, the Creator put them here, so obviously there's a reason. Who am I to judge that? I don't want to be judging that. I just want to show up with unconditional love and boundaries. So that's what is right here. Go ahead.
From this, it is clear that anyone who destroys chesed will not exist in the world to come.
Okay, so we're here to channel chesed, to channel mercy, to channel unconditional love. If you can't find that within yourself to do that, you're not going to be part of the world to come. Like, the world to come gets explained as this time in the future where Messiah is here, and we have Messiah consciousness, and we have immortality, and we have complete healing. There's no illness. We're living in the time of the Messiah. We're living with immortality and peace. No conflict, no chaos, no negativity. Well, there may be chaos and negativity, but we're not experiencing it. So one way of looking at that is, if you stand in the way, if you block this energy of chesed, this mercy, you won't be part of that. It's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is let's not look at it as the world to come. Let's look at it as the world that comes, which is actually a more literal translation of the words. Olam haba, the world that comes, the world that flows. And Kabbalistic, we know that Olam haba is another word for Bina. Bina is there in the upper realm. Bina is part of the way this world is wired. So another way to look at it is if you stand in the way of chesed, of mercy, of unconditional love in the world, you're actually not really participating in the deeper reality, which is Bina. And so we want to understand that where our consciousness is, how much chesed, how much mercy, how much unconditional love we can channel into the world, it correlates with us being part of the world to come, with experiencing the deeper reality of Bina consciousness. Okay, continue.
Matot ends with the reference to Levirate marriage where the children's man's brother restores chesed to the world.
Okay, so it ends with actually an example of what of what people do in a certain circumstance to reestablish, restore chesed to the world. And it's the following scenario. What's a levirate marriage? A levirate marriage is a woman's husband dies and she is childless. So now she's a childless widow. And Kabbalistically, what the Torah discusses this in this week's portion, Kabbalistically, spiritually, if there is a single brother, unmarried brother, then that brother has an obligation to marry his sister-in-law, his childless sister-in-law. How does that reestablish chesed in the world? Because it's a chesed that he does it. It's a mercy that he does that. And the goal is for them to have children and to return that lost soul to the world. There's a lot we could say about that. There's a lot of aspects of it. That's basically what's going on. There's also a process if the brother is not going to marry the wife. There's a process also that they go through, which is still a very merciful process. So either way, we're establishing and channeling mercy into the world. So again, our primary takeaway from this is, yeah, the world is maintained with two colors, but our role is to manifest mercy and unconditional love in the world. That's what our role is. But it's the balance of mercy and judgment, and that's why we're saying it's two colors. Okay, let's go now to the English for verse 1.
But all the women's children that have not known man by living with him,
By lying with him. So,
by lying with him.
yeah, that's this week's portion of Bamidbar, chapter 31, verse 18. So what are we talking about here? Who are women children? Well, those would be minors. Who are women children who have not known man by lying with him? So known in this context is is a synonym for having sex. So these are virgin women. That's what this verse is referring to. Now, that's the literal translation, but it's also a certain amount of innocence. And we all have innocence, especially when we're young. Karen Berg was famous for saying, we become adults because we become adulterated, like that innocence, that purity that we have. We lose a certain sense of the reality of the world by becoming adulterated, and we become adults. She's really referring to, perhaps for many of us, we had a greater spiritual sense when we were younger than when we became older and more dismissive of that. If we're, on this path, obviously we rediscovered that spiritual side to ourselves. But in this context, what it's saying also is that there is a process that our souls go through in this world that shapes us, that informs us. It's the experiences that we have that assist us in channeling more positivity to the world. We come here, we don't even know what our soul's purpose is. And it's those life experiences that position us to better align ourselves with our soul's purpose. That's what we're talking about here. Okay, let's continue.
In relation to this, we learned that Rabbi Yehuda said that the world is maintained by two colors only, white and red.
Okay, so what does the world being maintained by two colors have anything to do with virgins? I mean, that's the thing. It's hard to make that connection on the face of it. It's really about the ways in which we show up with a certain level of naivete, with a certain amount of innocence about really what's going on in the world. I had a conversation with somebody today along these lines. Is like they wanted to know if a certain legal matter was concluded, and I said, "Well, I'll believe it when I see the signed court order." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, people say things all the time, but I said I need to see certain things in black and white. Otherwise, I just don't know that they've actually happened." I'm not going to rely on what someone says. I need to see it. Someone can tell you they own a piece of property. They can tell you anything. But unless you see the recorded deed, and even then, even then you need title insurance. Unless you see the deed and get title insurance, you don't know. I mean, people say things all the time. This is part of the illusion of this reality that we're in. People have their own perception. They actually may believe it. Doesn't mean it's true. So, um, yeah, you gain that insight through life's experiences. We want to maintain, though, chesed, mercy, unconditional love, even in the context of some harsh life experiences. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about the balance of right and left, of red and white, of the world being maintained with two colors. You're going to start off at a very innocent level in life. Children, I mean, this is the picture of innocence. We're going to start very innocent. And all of a sudden, we're going to experience harshness. And you can go the way of harshness, and people do, and we see it. And they don't process the traumatic experiences that they have. They bury them. And so that affects them, and they show up in ways that are not considerate, in ways that are harsh, in ways that show how limited they are in terms of their compassion and their ability to show up with unconditional love. They just do. Life's knocked them around. They don't have that. Well, that's judgment. It's understandable. I don't even want to judge that. It's totally understandable. But this is about, that doesn't maintain the world. Maintaining the world requires both. Requires, even with that harshness that we experience, of finding a balance between compassion and harshness. Even though we've experienced, what does it mean? Why did we have to experience that harshness? We have to experience that so we can create the balance. So we have the insight. So we have the breadth of knowledge, the experiences we need to bring to life's circumstances. That's the journey of your soul. We asked for experiences that would help wake us up to that deeper reality. So yeah, life is pain, but life doesn't necessarily have to be suffering. Maria, are you raising your hand or you're just
Yeah.
exercising?
Yes. I mean, I've been listening since we started here, and this keeps ringing in my head because this happened to me actually yesterday. I was talking to my oldest sister. I have two sisters, and we all like different side of each other in different place in this country. But anyways, and with our own mindset. But my oldest one is the one that also follows more spirituality in her world. So a little bit in quick short story, her first daughter from her first marriage passed in a car accident when she was 10 years old. My first niece, the love. So,
Sorry
it's,
to hear that. That's tough.
yeah. So through years, she remarried, has two more kids, all grown up, whatever. So through years, she felt that she has accepted. I mean, it took her years for her to really pass that pain, that harsh pain. But even today, she's still. But she was calling me yesterday. She called me yesterday because the day before we're supposed to talk, and she was crying after church, and she couldn't talk to me, so I let her go to sleep. So she called me yesterday to tell me this pain that we're talking about children and love and how we should, care and be more kind to have mercy for ourselves on our harsh time, on judgment, because she was judging herself. So she was telling me yesterday that, oh, I'm sorry I couldn't call you. This is what happened, So she told me she all of a sudden she heard about something about her first husband illness, da da da. So she reached out to him to see how he was doing, da da da, and he ended up sending her some picture of their kids, of the daughter that passed, my first niece that passed, a different picture that she's not used to seeing. She said, when I moved out of Puerto Rico and I went to Chile, and I always have this picture of her, but he happened to send me this other picture of her yesterday. And it just broke me completely. And I thought that I had surpassed that. And she started judging herself through everything, back all over 20 something years. And I'm like, you can't do that to yourself. And she just like, Maria, it was so crying that I thought that her loss happened yesterday. And I thought I had surpassed
I,
that. I couldn't
so
I couldn't go through all that. And I told her, oh my God, I'm looking at from what Kabbalah is teaching us. And you kind of guide me through that on one of my events years ago that I went through. That sometimes when you go through a lot of harsh process in life and judgment, doesn't mean it's bad. It's good. And the crying that comes from a place from your inside of you, it means the cleansing that we need to. And so I spoke to her about that with that lens, right? I said, don't judge yourself. She's in a good place. She came to you yesterday for a reason. Maybe you needed to unlock something within that you can cry and get it out that way. And maybe she helped you release that by coming to you that way through that picture. And she completely looked at the whole advice completely different. She goes, oh my God, I never looked at it that way. And it's just so funny that I'm talking to you today and it's just like a whole freaking cloud just lifted out of me. And that harshness and that I was punishing myself the last 2 days, and today is just being completely different. I said, I think you went through something internally. Your soul was going through something and you didn't realize it. And by her coming to you that way through that picture, which reminded you something, you went through that cleansing that you needed to go through. And she was like, oh my God, I think I have to talk to this in my church about it because this is an experience that I never looked at it that way. We ended the call. She was more at peace, but it's just funny because the way you explaining today of how, the mercy and the judgment that we're talking about today and mentioning children, sometimes we're very harsh on ourselves when we go and we are in a situation and, unless we see it and understand it or somebody else that we share with see it from another lens and able to see light in a better way, um, it kind of brings a better breathing and cloud to that moment that we're living.
yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really a really powerful story, and I don't know where to start because it brings up so many things. But the couple takeaways from what you shared, like it's this blending of mercy and judgment. But as you point out, it's we need to be merciful with ourselves. Like your sister was judging herself for the experience that she was having, and I can only imagine you lose a child and you have that picture and then you see a different picture and there's an aspect of that child that you hadn't thought about forever. And it's just like, of course you're living the pain because it's almost like you're looking at a different person it's like, I mean, of course, but like there's an aspect of yourself that wants to judge ourselves or why I'm not over that yet. You're never over it. That's the truth. You're never over it. You grow and you develop greater resilience, but it doesn't go away. It's just you grow. So it's not occupying as much of your energy because you're growing. But it's still there. And so the reminder of that is gonna, no question, trigger all those emotions. And so it was to a great degree, it was a very healthy thing that she was able to go through because she's not only remembering, but also having an opportunity to forgive herself. I mean, some people walk around with, and I had this with a student this week, like they were actually talking about a addiction that they have. It's not a heavy addiction. It's kind of a mild addiction, but it's addiction nonetheless. And I'm like, look, I know you're trying to change, but what is the pain that you are trying to comfort yourself? What is the pain? What is the underlying pain? It's like when we do this all the time, we are experiencing pain and we right away pour a drink, pour a smoke, go shopping. And like, okay, yeah, I get it, but let's just acknowledge that we're in pain and ask ourselves, where is the source of that pain? And this is a way that again, it's about self-compassion and it's about self-awareness, but it's also about self-compassion. Of course, you're in pain, but we need to remind ourselves of that because we judge our own pain, just like your sister was. And it's just, I'm so glad you brought that up. We judge ourselves. Who are we to judge ourselves? I mean, at some level, the pain is real. We have to acknowledge the pain so we can process it, work through it, and get some perspective on it. Otherwise, we're walking around in pain, and we know people in our lives who are just difficult because they're dragging baggage around. It's not baggage you can see, but you can see it. You see it, it's reflecting through that pain and how they show up without the ability to be compassionate, to be merciful, because their own pain is in the way.
Hey, David, I'd like to add, being someone who's been through this and a slightly different perspective, and you can use it for so many different things that we're all trying to go through and overcome. When you think you've overcome something, that's actually the mistake, right? There's so many levels of, and I love it because I see Ron nodding his head. You think you've overcome it, and the mistake is to think you're done. You just don't know, because if it's a negative trait, it's going to come back. If it's a personal trait like Maria's describing for her sister, you have so many different levels that you will have to cleanse and go through. And each one represents you getting to another level. And I used to be bugged by the Kabbalah Center always saying, get to your next level. But if you assume you're done, you're not done, right? Because the only way you're done is that you've reached Mashiach, right? That you're a Sadiq. Otherwise, you wouldn't, you just have to acknowledge and appreciate that your work is never done. And each one of these is actually an opportunity. And in Maria's example, the question is, to me, I see the compassionate side. It wasn't bringing it back up because I hadn't gotten over it. It was, I saw something beautiful that reminded me what the beautiful person was. That was my daughter. I didn't view that negatively. So I'm just saying there's so many layers that we have to experience. And, I don't presume to tell you that's what she was experiencing, but I'm just saying what came up for me was something very beautiful.
Right. So sometimes in that context, and I'm thinking about a difficult life experience that a member of my family went through this week. A very painful experience, and I actually participated in a Zoom session with a professional who was discussing how do you talk to someone who has, God forbid, lost a child. And she went over a lot of the do's and don'ts of like what to say. And one of the things she was sharing, like, don't give them advice. I'm not talking about Maria and her sister. Maria handled it very well. But like in general, like you don't want to ignore them. You don't want to ignore people when they're going through life's challenges. You want to be compassionate and you want to be supportive. So it's like, what do you do to be supportive and compassionate? It's for them to process. It's not for us to process. We're processing it in a different way, but it's for so like it's like we want to show up as supportive. And sometimes the only thing you can do to be supportive is just kind of just show up, give them a hug, tell them you love them, and you're thinking about them. That's it. That's really sometimes all that you can do. And that is bringing mercy into the process for people and letting them work through their process and knowing that they're supported. Unfortunately, the awkwardness of that forces people to kind of disengage. And we can all think of challenges we've had in life where people have disengaged and you're like, well, I mean, they're not there for me. So like, unfortunately, they're not there. They're just not there. You can't change that. That's their capacity. That's all they have the capacity for. But and I'll close with this because we're out of time. We want to be able to be there for people and be compassionate and bring compassion and unconditional love and mercy into the world in the most difficult of circumstances. And we also want to be there for ourselves when we're going through difficult circumstances, and all of us do. And I want to leave you with an affirmation on this that I was just like working through this morning with somebody. I honor the pains of the changes that occur in my life and release their vibrations from my body. It's like we want to be able to honor the pains, be there with them, process them, and release them. Okay, everyone. We're out of time. Thank you. Thanks for all your
Thank you so
contributions.
much. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Love you all. Shabbat shalom. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.